Every time I go to the airport, $100 million airplane, revenue paying passengers, experienced cockpit crew, courteous flight attendants, doors closed, ATCs given clearance. But if that marshaller does not come and give you those signals, as the CEO, founder of an airline, you cannot move that aircraft 1 inch. The fact that Akasa flight attendants wear sneakers today, right? And I was involved very much so in the previous airlines uniform. But that was sensibilities of 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Life has changed. People have changed. The choices have changed.
But I was like, Rahul, actually, you know what? I don't want a salary. I'm okay with zero, but I want 10% equity in 3 hotels. And he's like, dude, we have a 10% ESOP pool. I said, I want all of it. And he said, no, we have nothing left. Then he told me something interesting. He said, if you're mentally ready for zero salary,
then do something.
That means you're in a founder mode already. The objective, Aditya, for the barbershop is people like you who have had such storied careers and lives, when you guys come and talk about it in a vulnerable, authentic, honest way. And I know you to also sprinkle a generous amount of humility on this, because you just, for all that you've achieved, it's amazing how generous you are with your time. Even things like, it comes out in very small interactions, but things like apologizing for being 5 minutes late. And I told Mona that it was not 10:40, it was an 11 a.m. shoot, so he's not late at all. He said, no, I got him 15 minutes earlier. But, to like even what you said right now about having a lot of self-doubt or being more curious than someone who's very, very confident. When people hear you talk and hear your story, hopefully one person of the million people who hear this, even if one person ends the podcast and says, okay, you know what, I have the courage and to
I mean, the reason for that is, Shantanu, that this whole thing of who's an alpha male, who's an alpha female, I think it's kind of weirdly got twisted into this aggressive sort of disrespectful, obnoxious sort of way of working and things like that. And then when you look at leaders, in our lives, right? But it could be a teacher who taught you in school. It could be a sports teacher. It could be a drama teacher. In my case, it was my, public speaking or drama teacher, and so on and so forth. Parents, somebody look up to, business leaders. I think humility is one of the most underrated virtues. And these people are not being humble. It's not like a pretense, right? It's not like somebody told them that, humility, it'll be a good brand value. Aap usko thoda sa add kar lo. They're actually genuinely that way. Rajiv Bajaj, Dilip Shangvi, people I've met and, I've seen. They're just so incredibly humble. And I often say this to my friends, some close friends, that, sometimes you walk into these sort of a party or a get-together or a dinner, and there'll be, man or woman, there'll be somebody who just be hogging the mic or will, even if they're speaking a little bit, it'll be like they're applying for a Forbes 40 under 40 type of thing. And then I look at them and I'm thinking, yaar, aapne kya kiya hai? And then when I look at these true leaders that I admire, I do think, kya kiya hai life? Maybe there is a lot so much to learn. There is always somebody in anything we do. There's always somebody who's doing it better than us.
Yeah.
Right. We can aspire to be the best. Absolutely, we should. But I think staying, I often write this when I'm gifting books to people or something like that, to take an airline analogy, the only way to fly high is to stay grounded.
Yeah.
And
so powerful, actually.
Yeah, because, I think that's.
I don't know whether you noticed on the left side when you entered the office and came to your right.
Yeah.
But on the left is our main motto of our company, which is Speed Zen Terra et Sidera Visus in Latin, which translates to feet on the ground and eyes on the stars.
Oh, fantastic.
And that's because we don't want to be anything less than ambitious.
Yes, absolutely.
And want to aim for everything. But at the same time, we don't want success to get to us. But it's a thin balance, right? Because it's important, especially in a country where I think a lot of us grew up more insecure than we needed to, in competitive environments, exams through school,
Scarcity.
college, scarcity, financially and otherwise, that I think it's important for us to also celebrate success without it getting to our head. So that's a fine balance that I also have.
Yeah.
Like I also struggle as a founder. How much do we really celebrate? Because it's important baseline, but without it becoming.
So I have a long, complicated, well, actually not complicated, but a detailed framework around this that I've kind of developed over the years.
I'm very curious.
Yeah. So one is that, and there'll be a few things that will, on the face of it, look a little bit contradictory, but I'll take the time to explain that. I think human beings, more than money and power, are looking for fame.
Okay.
So
Let's break that down.
Yeah.
So when you say fame, you mean
recognition.
Recognition. Okay.
Recognition, right? So it's like, let's say you're playing a match, especially amateur athletes, right?
Yeah.
Right. If you're an Olympian and you're part of the Olympic gold list, right? If you're an Olympian, it's only now recently that some of them will have brand endorsements, etc. For what maybe it'll be an interesting statistic to see how many Olympians actually don't make a full-time living from just living off their Olympic medal.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm guessing that it'll be in the 90s.
Yeah.
There'll be a coach, there'll be a manager somewhere or something like that.
They'll probably be in the Indian Railways.
Yeah, exactly. Indian Railways, police,
Yeah.
right, etc. And this is probably around the world.
Yes.
Actually, more so in the West.
Yeah.
Suddenly you'll find somebody who'll say, "Oh, I was actually part of the Olympic yachting team, or the swimming team, or something of that sort." So, but what they're looking for is that recognition, right? They're looking for the medal. Similarly, at work as well. When you're in class, nothing like the boss sort of recognizing your name, or the teacher patting you on the back, or just simply saying, I was scoring the marks, but this, Shantanu, you did, your essay was really, very different. I mean, that will be more important, and that will be a more precious memory than the certificate you got or the marks you scored. Therefore, I'm a big believer on positive reassurance. I'm a really big believer on that, right? And so instantaneous celebration of something, it just comes to me very naturally, and I've always encouraged people around me, leaders around me to do the same. It doesn't have to be, saved up for that monthly R&R.
Yeah.
I mean, do that for sure. But that instantaneous celebration saying, hey, you know what? And it could be simply, I remember there's a young colleague of mine, and she was part of this meeting and all of that. And suddenly, like in the middle, she got up and she's a senior person. She got up and suddenly got coffees for everybody. And I didn't say anything to her right away in the meeting. But later, I remember I called her and I said, you know what, and thanks for doing that. It was just really, really nice of you and very... So it could be something as small as that, or it could be meeting a target.
Yeah.
So let's keep that as one thing, right?
On this side, before you move to the next part of your framework, on this also I've noticed, I've asked this question to a lot of people, that if you ask this question to especially successful people, that what was that turning point which kind of created the trajectory of your career or your accomplishments, it's usually a moment like this.
Yeah.
It's never a big promotion.
That's right.
Or it's never a big victory. It's usually someone saying something, and that it's very momentary.
That's right.
But that changes everything about that person, and I'm always amazed that if it actually comes down to this, then why don't we maximize this for everyone around us?
Absolutely right. So the other day I was listening to Nitin Kamath, and he was saying that how, he used to be a day trader for a long period of time, And then somebody called Prakash, and I should find out who this gentleman is. I think he's an investor out of that. He said that he gave him some 25 lakhs at a gym. Like, Nitin was working out, so is this gentleman Prakash. What do you do? I do day trading already, and, doing all right. There's no Zerodha, there's nothing happening at that time. And he says, here's 25 lakhs. If you're doing it for yourself, can you do it for me as well?
That's crazy.
Insane, right?
Yeah.
Rahul Bhatia and Rakesh Gangwal, when they, gave me the opportunity, or they actually said, that you should come and run the airline. I'm 32 years old. I'm a lawyer. I've never been to business school. I've never done a business role in my life before. I've been around businesses. I was involved in kind of the inception of Indigo and all of those kind of things. And I remember just the eve of my taking on the CEO role. In those days, there was no WhatsApp, SMS. And I sent a SMS to Rahul saying, Rahul, I'll give it my best shot. And within seconds, Rahul replied back saying, that's all I'm looking for, Aditya. That, I think, was probably one of the most powerful statements for this youngster to go and say, you know what, let me give it my best shot and see. So I think that like you said, that recognition, and that's why I believe that, that recognition is so important. And I have an example of that in just a bit. So this is on one side. The other side is, and here I'm sure a lot of, maybe you or even some of our other colleagues in the sort of early stage startup world may have a different point of view from me. I'm not a huge believer in fiscal incentive to do what you're supposed to be doing. Because what happens is, let's say I'm supposed to give you a cup of coffee every time you walk into the office.
That's the job.
And then, after a while, I kind of start slacking. And instead of some other tool, what you do is, Aditya, I'll give you 1 rupee each time you get me a cup of coffee. Right? And after the next, again, I'll start slacking and you'll say, I'll give you 2 rupees this time. Before you know, you have trained me to not do my job out of motivation and passion and, for all the right reasons, but I'm doing it because you started off with 1 rupee and are probably now up to 5 rupees. At Akasa or at Indigo, at least a couple of airlines that I'm involved in or have been involved in, there is no fiscal incentive for people to turn the aircraft around on time. But people are doing it today. Akasa is the most on-time airline in the country. People are doing it because of the pride and the passion and the motivation that comes from within. And there are several ways to build that up. So therefore, in summary, what I always, at least recommend is that find a way to motivate people and get them to see why they're doing something as opposed to the what.
Yeah.
When you get me this cup of coffee every day in the morning, as bad a day I might have had, as sleep deprived I may be, or as scary the day that I might have ahead of me, just you bringing it in at the right temperature, at the right time, gives me the feeling that, there is something right in the world, somebody who cares. And obviously, I appreciate it because you're tracking when I left home, you're tracking when I got into the parking, you're tracking when I'm coming up the lift. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Completely different from saying, here is 1 rupee.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Now, what I said, of course, then puts a burden on us as leaders
to recognize
that. Now, that's where the second part of it comes. Underlying this recognition has to be a deep sense of respect for everybody who brings in that cup of tea for you in the morning to someone who's solving a hard sort of code problem, for instance. Because each one of us is an equal. We just have different roles to play in a company.
Yeah.
Right. And if we genuinely believe that, again, to use an airline analogy, every time I go to the airport, you see this, if it's a narrow body jet, a $100 million airplane with revenue paying passengers, experienced cockpit crew, courteous flight attendants, engines spooled up, doors closed, ATCs given clearance. But if that marshaller does not come and give you those signals, as the CEO, founder of an airline, you cannot move that aircraft 1 inch. You can't take an executive decision and tell the pilot, move the aircraft. That marshaller has to give you the signal. So it's a deep reminder how each one of us has a role to play. So I think that, now having said that, if you are going to do it just as being superficial, you will end up encouraging mediocrity. Yeah. And then the folks who are the real hard workers, who are really, pushing themselves, will turn around and say, why should I? If everybody gets that same incentive, if everybody gets a pat on their back, because I have been in companies, and I, of course, will not name them, at least one, where one of my most frustrating experience was the company is not doing well, revenue is declining, profitability is taking a hit, but in every conversation in the conference room, she's great, he's great, just such a good job, Arey yaar, kya good job, yaar? Company doob rahi hai.
Correct.
Right? The only reason you're surviving is because, you're standing on the shoulders of people who have worked hard in the last several years. So you should not make it cheap. You should not make it so commodity.
Yeah.
It has to be special.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that's how I kind of think about it.
Again, I love how you give aviation examples, because I want to get into aviation a lot more. But for me, it's also maker of men.
By the way, I have a barbershop example that I give to in every airline or every speech I do.
Sure. Which is what?
Which is around loyalty programs.
Okay.
So, this, by the way, I've been doing this for 10 years. maybe 15 years. So I do this survey. I said, okay, how many people go to a barbershop or a beauty salon? So typically, not everybody raises their hand. I said, I know all of you are naturally good looking, but just on an off day. So then the hands will go up. I said, okay, how many of you go back to the same barbershop over and over again? All the hands will go up. How many of you go back to the same person over and over again, right? Now, you can choose a barbershop which is closer to your home, closer to your work, more luxurious, more affordable, someone which gives you a free, soda or a magazine, but you keep going back to the same person, right? Because of the trust and reliability.
Correct.
Our customers are exactly the same. No amount of free sodas or magazines, or for that matter, free food or blankets or whatever, can take that customer away from you if that customer feels that they can really rely and trust you. Trust and reliability are the biggest loyalty programs ever.
That's so true.
And if you can do that, where your customers become your brand ambassadors, your customer acquisition cost comes down, and and you're not diluting revenue by trying to do a loyalty program and so on and so on.
It always comes down to making someone feel special. So, for example, in the barbershop example, the person you go back to is the person who made you feel the most special. And that, you're right, it never comes from freebies. It doesn't come from a discount. It doesn't come from a welcome drink.
Exactly.
It comes in the case of a barbershop specifically, it comes from that extra 3-4 minute free massage that the guy does before you leave.
Oh, absolutely.
That's where he has you. And you are basically
sold,
wedded to him and that 5 minutes after whatever you asked him to do, for which you pay, but he gives you that 5 minutes extra. And you feel, okay, I owe this guy my customership for life. And that's why people go back. People just keep going back. But anyway, I want to come back to aviation before that, I think the whole leadership, I love the framework around people want recognition, make it scarce but real time, and don't confuse it with, and don't confuse it with fiscal incentivization. I think in your example, you should fiscally incentivize the person for getting you a cup of coffee that is way better than the one that you had expected.
For sure.
Or or in a cup which has got your name on it.
Absolutely.
Something which is above and beyond the
absolutely.
Right? But for doing the job, I think it's a very important thing. You're right. We do it here as well. I think people who don't achieve targets sometimes celebrate that team or that individual, and it leaves me confused as to whether we got the target setting exercise right at all or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
What you said, because once that person knows that recognition, he's probably going to try to make a better and better tea, right? He's going to try to bring a napkin along with it, or something of that sort. And there are two things. One should always recognize that, right? And the other is, I always also think that pockets of excellence don't work. But you've got to identify that pocket of excellence and then try to copy paste that across the organization in a system-led, process-oriented way.
Yeah.
So let's say if you're running a tea shop or a barbershop or an airline, whatever it is, we can't rely on one slide in a PowerPoint which says use case study, But you've got to try to take that and say, you know what, there's something that Aditya is doing about this serving tea. Can I now really study this? What is this person doing right? Can I break it down into processes? Can I turn it into a learning module? And can I ensure that anybody who walks into any, of my offices, in this case, any guest, they will figure out a way on how to kind of get even that just little experience of getting the tea. Yeah. I learned this. I remember two things. I'm obsessed with service excellence. I love it. Years ago, I remember I was going for a meeting with somewhere. Now it's quite commonplace, but the assistant called and said, if you don't mind, you're 10 minutes away. I said, yeah, I'm 10 minutes away. What's your choice of beverage? I'm like, what? I said, I'll have anything. No, I mean, would you like a tea or a coffee or a Coke or soda or whatever, water, this, that, the other? So I said, I'll have a black coffee and also water. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Right. So by the time I walked in, there was a coffee and a bottle of water kept, right? It's so tiny, right?
It means the world, but
another one, and therefore, when somebody comes to our office, we try to kind of find out, and now we also try to find out whether you have any dietary restrictions, what kind of allergy you like, and blah blah blah. Now you can turn around and say, "Yeah, he's coming to your." It's not a restaurant. I understand that, but it is something that we picked up from somewhere and copied it. Or for that matter, again, many years ago, one of my first visits to Airbus, 2005.
In France,
in Toulouse. And got off the aircraft. They'd sent a car to pick us up. In the car was a little folder, and now Boeing also does it, by the way. But yeah, I had seen it first years ago, 19 years ago. There was a little folder with a printout of who are the people attending from each side, when are the meetings, what time are they, what is the location, what's the drive time, who's the driver, what's the driver's number, for the 3 days.
Incredible, no?
Right. somebody spend some time. Ab kya hai ki now your one stress level is down, right?
Significantly.
Right? You know, when you're going to eat, you know, who's my driver? When is this person coming? This, that, the other. Just that little effort. You know, of course, nowadays you'll get it on your phone, but that little effort of sort of putting it down together. So that's a pocket of excellence. And then you can apply this to a restaurant. You can apply this to a hotel. You can apply this to an airline. So, for example, if I was running a restaurant, which I have an involvement in Chowringhee in London, imagine if Mr. Deshpande is coming, right? It takes nothing these days to say, when you give the menu, for it to have a little saying, welcome to Chowringhee, Mr. Deshpande. You will definitely carry that menu card back.
Yeah.
And what is it there? You've already think about it.
Yeah.
As a restaurant, I know you booked.
Yeah.
I know your name. I know you're coming. I know what time you're coming. All I have to do is type in your name and print it out.
Coming to aviation, I think one of the things I wanted to ask you, and given that a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, are thinking about entrepreneurship, and you've done this now so successfully, Akasa has kind of really taken off quite literally. But aviation is not a place where, like, for example, when I was starting up and I was evaluating multiple ideas, starting an airline
was not
one of them.
Yeah.
And the more I've gotten to think, especially now with the government talking about manufacturing and so on, a lot of people are going to very capex heavy, traditionally.
Yes.
I met an entrepreneur whose passion is in transmission towers, and he has done the entire analysis on how gigawattage of India is going to go from here to here. Here's how much solar investment is going to happen, and now they require entrepreneurs to set up transmission towers because we still have X amount of discom issues and so on. I was amazed, and I think that a lot of these traditionally heavy industries, which may have moats because of capital requirements or regulatory issues, will now see a lot more entrepreneurs coming in. So one of the things about Barbershop is actually just giving a primer on an industry that you know like the back of your hand. But tell me about aviation, because I don't know anything about it. So what was it like? And here is what I think. I take probably 50 flights a year. So I'm a fairly frequent flyer. So I'm a user of the industry. I read a lot about it. I've seen two of the stalwarts of the industry, kind of have a fall from grace, which was unfortunate but real, right? I used to fly Jet and Kingfisher all the time, and then I was at McKinsey.
Or Air Deccan.
Actually, right? And they kind of withered away. But Indigo, 60% market share, profitable, return to shareholders being just off the charts, and genuine consumer love in an industry where people typically say, okay, I want to go from New Delhi to Bombay at this time, show me the 5 flights, mostly similar priced, or the one that is the cheapest, I'll book it and make my trip and go. Right? In an industry which operates like that at a consumption level, to be able to create the kind of consumer love that you did, and I must give you kudos, because the Indigo experience, from the moment you enter the airport to the communication on the sandwich, to the way the flight attendant talks to you, to the quality of food, there's so much innovation, and every time that I felt that, okay, this is a place where someone could have actually premiumized a commoditized service and really given consumers a luxurious, on-time experience. But at the back was a very robust and complicated business that was actually putting itself out there at every touch point. So take me through that a little bit, and our viewers as well.
Sure. So actually, I love operationally heavy, businesses. I really get excited when something is very execution, heavy, right? And for maybe multiple reasons, but one of the primary reasons is that since I never went to engineering school, right, and I never learned coding. I cannot create the next WhatsApp, right? I mean, it's just impossible for me. I mean, at least I'll have to spend the next 30 years trying to learn something, nothing is impossible, but it's definitely, outside the realm of possibility to a great extent. But I also think that so therefore what happens is, especially in the last 20, 30 years, I think, when youngsters came out of college or business school or whatever, there were many, sort of relatively lower hanging fruit out there saying, if I put in the effort on this and agar isme maine 5-10 saal lagaye, then I will, be able to ride the consumer wave, the tech wave, etc. But somehow we forgot that it's all of this that has to come together. So there are a whole bunch of really operational heavy businesses, and I'm purposely not saying capital heavy. Operational heavy businesses, execution heavy businesses, lots of processes involved, lots of people involved, where the moat may be lower in terms of entry. After all, there is nothing unique about the airline business. There is nothing unique about the hotel business, right? I mean, it's been around for, in the case of the airline business, over 100 years. In the case of hotels business, over 2,000 years. But kya hota hai that most people will sort of mill around a certain space, a certain sort of level, because they're all copying each other. Now, if you can spend the time, have the tenacity and the detail-orientedness to say, you know what, let me break this thing down. Let me break this problem statement down to not 2, 3, 5 parts, but 1,000 parts. And can I create a better quality, more affordable, or faster way of doing this? Then collectively, when you get these billion $1 ideas, you have created something that is so different from the rest of the pack.
Correct.
That it makes it difficult for the other person to copy.
Correct.
Right?
That is so true.
Yeah. So now what that means is it's a risk and reward thing, right? Therefore, if you put in that, 5, 7, 10, 15 years and just keep at it and create those what sometimes seems like incremental improvements, but it's actually a continuous improvement, then the collection of it is so dramatically different from all the other players who are in there. Yeah. So second is that, the other reason is that people think, but airlines don't make money. The way I kind of think about it is that, let's say in a country like India, where over the last 20 years, big and small, there might have been 15, 20 airlines, not more than that. And if in those 15, 20 airlines, a couple of them became successful and one of them became hugely successful, probability of success is far higher than the number of people who started call centers in India.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
But it's such a visible failure. I mean, imagine how many people must have started banks.
Yeah.
And how many mediocre banks there are.
Yeah.
And there is only one HDFC, there is only one Kotak, there is only one ICICI, right?
Correct.
So that's the second thing. The third is that I think, it's somewhat easy to get caught up in thinking we are about a transportation business. We fly airplanes. I've always thought we're about actually taking human beings, customers, from point A to point B on time with their bags safely in a warm and friendly manner. So if I now start thinking about this whole process, this whole business, from only 2 points of view, consumer and the employee or the colleague, it suddenly makes the business very, very different. It makes it much more interesting, and you suddenly start looking at, wow, there are so many opportunities. And when you in Akasa, for example, a year into our operations, some of my colleagues, there's a colleague of mine called Ramita who heads customer experience, Georgina who works with me, and a few others, Belson. They launched a project saying, you know what, and like, you know, the little task that I set out is for everybody is that, look, we're a year in, fastest growing airline in the world. You know, nobody's got to 20 airplanes in the first year, and et cetera, et cetera. But as a little rinky-dinky airline right now, can we go back and see what are all the friction points that the customer experiences from the time that they think of buying a ticket to when they either take a refund or they have collected their bags and left the airport. There were 297 friction points that they came up with. Now, that friction point could be something like, you know, if I'm giving a sauce, is that sauce in a container that is easy to use, or it will drop on the tray table?
Correct.
That friction point could be the bounce rate on a website. Right. Now, if I can take all of those and find a way to use better processes, better technology, or different types of people, or just a different approach, and create incremental advantages over someone else, then hopefully you'll be able to create something which suddenly, after a period of time,
becomes even better than the actual thing.
And it's not when you're doing that work. Like, I get asked all the time, "Aajkal kya chal raha hai? You know, what are you up to?" It's very difficult for me to answer that in one sentence, right? Because there's, you know, several of these
297 pain point.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be in a product oriented business like Wholesome Foods, Meghna and Shorby's business. It could be somewhere else where you're constantly trying to think, okay, how can we make it better? Okay. Now, when it comes to the airline business, therefore, right? Let's start to break this thing up. The first is that, say that, okay, look, like the transmission business that you mentioned, or somebody could be making a certain material that goes into a chip, or for instance, somebody could be setting up a steel factory or a mining factory or whatever it is, mining site. Go in with the thing that it's a pretty hard problem to solve, but isme maza bhi aayega because, you know, I'm about to kind of look at it differently. And by the way, I had a similar question which I want to ask you, is that, you know, how did you kind of think about something like shaving products, right? Yeah. Which is not, and I really want us to spend a little time this thing, because I've always wanted to ask you that, because the reason I say this is that everybody's looking for their next new glamorous thing, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, you took a commodity which there was this one undisputed market leader around the world. It had almost become a noun. And then you come and say, you know what, we're going to create something different, right? And that too sitting in India. But back to this. So therefore, one is that mindset that I'm going to do this differently. The second is that, you know, again, to break it down and say, why are people not making money? And there's a very simple answer to that. you're spending money on things that the customer is not willing to pay for.
Yeah.
Always. You lose money when you're spending money on things that the customer is not willing to pay for.
Give me examples.
So if you're going to spend money on the red carpet and the blue carpet in front of the check-in counter and somebody to carry your bag, clean your spectacles, nobody hates it. They'll all love it. They're just not going to pay that one. I can walk on the airport floor and go to the check-in counter. I can also walk on that carpet. Do I like the carpet? Of course I like the carpet. Am I going to pay for the carpet? No, I won't pay for the carpet. I won't pay more for a sofa inside the bus that takes me from the terminal building to the aircraft.
Correct.
But I will pay for on time. I will pay for safety. I will pay for newer airplanes. I will pay for a frictionless journey.
I'll pay for extra leg room.
I'll pay for extra leg room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I'll pay for better food.
Yeah.
I'll pay for a choice of food. Yeah. Right? So there's this.
I love that, by the way. So
yeah, no.
When I was at McKinsey, and this is when I was to take like 4 flights a week.
Yeah.
I had told American Express, who was our travel guys, and I have a very clear priority of checking in basis my how much time to the flight have, right?
Yeah.
So I want emergency reclining aisle, followed by emergency reclining window, followed by emergency non-reclining aisle, followed by emergency non-reclining window, followed
by aisle seat,
regular aisle, followed by emergency reclining middle.
Yeah.
So there was like a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
And I remember like when Indigo kind of started pricing this differently, it was initially I was like, okay, great, because I can now I can pay for this.
Yes.
I would love to pay extra for something which I like.
You know, when you go from an airline like Akasa or Indigo and you suddenly go into another airline where you don't have that choice, after you've had that first free meal and you're hungry, you can't do anything. You can't buy more. The choice does not exist.
Correct.
Right? Other than requesting the flight attendant that can I get it, you're almost begging, can I get another meal? And the guy was like, no. You're only entitled to one. Right. So the point is that how can you find a way for there's a Harvard Business School professor called Cynthia Montgomery, and she talks about how do you increase the willingness to pay of the customer.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a finite set of resources, whether it's people, money, whatever it is, development time, whatever, what do you allocate that to where the customer is willing to pay for that?
Correct.
As opposed to all the other stuff that may look good, a free newspaper, a magazine, and this, that, and the other. Nobody will say no. So don't do a customer survey. The customer will say, of course I like it.
Yeah. How will I pay for it?
Will I pay for it?
This is again, in retrospect, you say it very simply that don't give something the customer won't pay for. But I can imagine a customer experience meeting. And say,
hell yeah.
We need to give a paper, we need to give a carpet.
Absolutely.
We have, and the argument is so strong to say we have to give the best customer experience. It's almost blasphemous to disagree with that.
Correct.
But I think the articulation which you made is where the profitability bridge can be crossed.
So I use that, what will the customer pay for as a filter to distinguish between what is the need of the consumer versus what is the want of the consumer.
Correct.
Right. But with a strong caveat that one has to understand that the customer changes. The customer's persona changes. The customer's demographic changes, Now, when that happens, you have to keep your eyes and ears to the ground. So it's not like, you kind of passed class 12 board exam with a high marks and now, you're set for life. Now, keeping that ears to the ground, meaning, how is my customer changing? And there's an article that I wrote some time back in that Indian School of Business journal in Mohali, that how do I stay relevant in the life of the consumer?
Mm.
If today, when you did not start off selling beard oil,
Correct.
but you sell it today.
Correct.
Because there are more men out there with beards today. Correct. Right? And COVID must have exponential. There must be some correlation.
Correct.
There, right? So so imagine, I can imagine somebody saying, you know what, we're a shaving company.
Correct.
Why are we going and telling people to grow beards?
Correct.
Yeah. So how do I stay close to the life of my consumer so that I know the consumer is now wanting these slightly different clothes. This consumer is now wanting these slightly different shoes. The consumer now is wanting something slightly different, right? And if I change too much, too quickly, consumer will not pay.
Correct.
If I don't, I'll get stagnant and I'll become irrelevant. So staying relevant in the life of the consumer is equally important, right?
Correct.
Now, back to again the airline business. To first, like I said, in this business, it's all about details. Item number one. Item number two, it's a little bit paradoxical. There are certain things that you just cannot change and things which are very commoditized. Apples to apples, low cost to low cost, or business class to business class, or single class to single class. Everybody flies the same type of airplanes.
Correct.
Seats are somewhat
Similar, correct.
Right. You fly the same airports. Fares are commoditized. They're one on top of the other. They're like a Coke can, a Pepsi can. They'll almost price the same. You can't, change one thing on the aircraft for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Right. You can't say, aajkal the color of this season is peach. So now let me change my seats to peach. So there are limited things that you can change. You can change the food menu. You can, there are very, very, very few things. But in that, how do you focus on the details?
Matters.
Where your experience is fundamentally different or better than the competitors. So that means today, for example, the Akasa seat is one of the most comfortable seats that people fly. The food...
And how is it more comfortable? More cushion?
More cushion, okay. Right. Now, you have to make that choice now.
Will the customer pay for it?
Will the customer pay for it? How much extra cost am I incurring? But then, as stage lengths have increased in India, people are now flying more. They're flying for longer. So, you don't want to have a pain in the butt, literally, at the end of that long journey. So I think slicing that down to see what are the elements in which I can create a service advantage over someone else, right? For that matter, and like I said, one was consumer, the other is employees. The fact that Akasa flight attendants wear sneakers today.
Yeah.
Right? And I was involved very much so in the, previous airlines uniform. But that was sensibilities of 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Life has changed. People have changed. The choices have changed. Right? So I have to also change my mindset. Or let's talk about something else. Let's talk about, let's say, wholesome foods, right? Megnan Shorvy's business. They're again trying to solve for something very hard. There is a plethora of products available with huge brand recall. They're cheap and affordable, but they're unhealthy, right? And they're bad for kids, for kids. And they're trying to create something saying that, no, let me create something which is equally convenient, equally tasty, but healthier. And at a price point that people can afford.
Yeah.
Somebody else will say, and I'm sure people said the same thing to you, किस कैटेगरी में जा रहा है यार? मतलब there are so many choices available already.
Yeah.
Right. So, when interesting you asked me that question. The way I think about the airline business is country of 1.4 billion people, only 500 odd commercial airplanes. Southwest Airlines has more than 1,000 airplanes today. The penetration of aircraft in India is negligible.
Yeah. When it hits me is when I'm getting off an airplane and without the aero bridge, you go down and take the bus.
That's right.
There are at least 5 people every time who are taking a selfie with the plane.
Correct.
Which shows that they're flying for the first time. And I used to wonder why people taking selfies, and then I realized that this is very common for me
in India.
But for that person, it's
exactly.
Go and show it to 10 of his friends. Yeah. Took a flight or to his kids or whatever.
There are some very interesting Instagram handles that I follow.
Okay.
I'm actually going to do a post about it. One is a truck driver who I've been following for a long time.
The food guy.
The food guy.
He's awesome.
Anand Mahindra, Rajesh. Right? Rajesh, the truck driver. I've been following him for a long time. Okay. There's a driver in Doha called Ajay.
Okay.
There is a software developer in Tokyo, guy from Haryana who's living in Tokyo, right? And he's an Indian software developer about his life in Japan. Now, there is another guy who is from Samastipur in Bihar, and he does these funny musical videos. There's a guy who's a chaat wala, the fuchke beechne wala, golgappe beechne wala somewhere. Now that is, you get a sense of what is aspirational there. India, right? When we say, that urban and rural aspirations are gradually converging.
Yeah.
And therefore, anything where there is low penetration. I saw the statistics from Neelkanth Shastri, the Axis Bank chief economist. So the penetration of air conditioners in China is 60%.
Correct.
In the US is 87%. And India is a hot country. What's the penetration of air conditioners?
I'll be very surprised if it's double digit.
Exactly, it's 5%.
5%, yeah.
You think you're air conditioners?
Yeah.
So that means if we double the number of air conditioners in this country, but made it cheaper, energy saving and all of that, we'll only reach 10%.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think that's because there are more people building houses.
Correct.
10% is not enough. Yeah.
Another very interesting statistic. 0.7% of India lives in apartments beyond 10 stories high.
Yeah.
85 to 90% of homes in India are ground floor and first.
Correct. To the independent homes also.
So that means in this massive country, which is land constrained, increasingly, and land prices are high. If I could make 4-story buildings also, 3-story, 4-story buildings also,
there's
a market. So this thing of, like you said, something that looks plain, boring, there are so many. Actually, there aren't so many. How did you think of shaving products?
The framework you gave initially, right, which is power, money and fame, I think McKinsey indexes, or consulting, even elite consulting, indexes poorly on all three over a period of time for the effort you're putting in. There is no fame because you're always talking about clients, you're always behind the scenes. There is zero power. You're a consultant. There is no P&L. There is no. The only power you have is the power of access. So again, it's borrowed power in a way. Money is good. Life is good. But for the effort you're putting in, I've seen senior partners spend.
And super smart people.
Aditya, they're spending. They're in 3 continents a week for years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine this guy I remember him, he used to have his watch on Singapore time. And he used to have lunch at 9 a.m. Having lunch at 9 a.m. I have to make my meals
So that your bio clock does not...
So he used to sleep. So he used to make his hotel room, like his assistant would make the hotel room dark as per Singapore night time. And all the team and the client would have... He was very effective at it, but it was just so not worth it. So for me, I realized that, 20... And the other thing was that a lot of people I was looking up to, like Meghna, were leaving McKinsey to start up on their own. Rahul and said left to start Tribo. Sai Kiran Krishnamurthy and Anant went to Flipkart and Myntra respectively. Deepak Garg started Rivigo. Meghna started Slurp Farm. And I always had this, my general, I'm a very lazy person. So I always look at 2-3 years my senior and I'm like, okay, whatever they're doing, I'm just going to copy it well. I don't want to put my own head. So if people at engineering school wanted to go to an IIM, I'm like, okay, cool. Smart guys are going to IIM, it must be a good decision. They've done the thinking, I'll go to an IIM. People at IIMs in the early 2000, like this 2010-11, the smart kids at IIM are going to consulting. I'm like, cool. They've decided, I'll follow them. And then at consulting, the smart people are going to go and starting up or, going to senior levels at Flipkart and Ola and so on. I'm like, cool, this seems to be... So my first, actually, the job I was offered, which I was very close to taking, but timelines didn't match, was a chief of staff to Mukesh Bansal at Flipkart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I negotiated the commercials, the position, all of that. And I told my manager at McKinsey that I'm going to leave. But he's like, no, you have to complete the client engagement for 2 months more. Then you should... And I told Flipkart that I'll need 2 months to leave. And they said, no, we need the requirement is now. So it didn't work out. My second job was going to be chief of staff to Rahul and Sid at Tribo Hotels in 2015.
That's amazing.
And Rahul told me that I had a commercial discussion with Rahul. He's like, Shantanu, we've just raised $6 million and, we have an ESOP pool that's large. What's your salary right now? And my salary at that time was, I think, 30 lakhs, okay? So he said, we'll match the salary and we'll give you 30 lakhs of ESOPs on top of that. And your ESOP pool, ESOP holding will go up more. So let's shake hands. I think it was a great offer, to be honest. For a, penny off the ground. I would have learned from two of the best founders I know. But I was like, Rahul, actually, you know what? I don't want a salary. I'm okay with 0, but I want 10% equity in Tribo Hotels. And he's like, dude, we have a 10% ESOP pool. I said, I want all of it. And he said, no, we have nothing left. And then he told me something interesting. He said, if you're mentally ready for 0 salary, then that means you're in a founder mode already. Then why do you want to start at 10% also? Start with 100. And then that's how I started. So I put in my papers and I thought about the opportunities and I realized that there's Amazon and Flipkart and delivery at that time and Jabong, Snapdeal were investing in building out e-commerce and logistics. Dollar Shave Club had shown that in a strong incumbent category, if you are able to innovate, they innovated on price. But you can use D2C to really get to every consumer. And that's how I narrowed down on a brand that is D2C or e-commerce friendly. And a lot of us did, right? Farmer, Boat, Bombay Shaving Company, Plum, a lot of companies that were now reaching the 8, 9, 10 year mark. Slurp Farm, etc. started around that time, 2015, 2016. And I realized that men was a very underserved personal care category. Every man was entering a bathroom using a soap or a body wash or a shampoo or a conditioner or a moisturizing cream bought by his wife or his girlfriend or his mom or his sister. But men were changing, right? Men wanted to be right swiped on Tinder and at that time Truly Madly and Bumble. So you're looking good mattered. Gym memberships went through the roof. Myntra started seeing way more than expected apparel purchases by men. So men wanted to look good. There was an industry that was allowing an ecosystem of brands to flourish. Facebook and Google and Amazon. AWS gave us free server space for the first 3 years. Free. I don't think people realize how much we have benefited from companies who actually invested through softwares. Facebook and Google used to have their managers in our office coaching us on Facebook ads, on Google ads, on SEO. And it was amazing, right? So I thought that it's a good place to start. And I felt that if you want to enter the bathroom of a male and give them grooming products, you can't stay away from shaving. Shaving is the core. And we started with that. But over a period of time, we've now moved into hair removal. So for men and women, if you want to remove unwanted hair from your body, Bombay Shaving Company and Bombay are the go-to brands. So if you want, and you're right, consumers today, and that's a whole issue, right? trimmers and shavers have become almost a converged category. Someone like you or me will use both products. We'll use a shaver on our cheeks and neck, on our heads, or a trimmer on our beards, right? And most consumers are now becoming like that. So we have now plays across the board. But to the one point which you made, Aditya, which resonated a lot with me was a billion $1 ideas come together and the company looks different. And I must give a shout out to Gillette for my respect for them has now gone through the roof, because it takes a lot for that one moment of truth. So for example, when you shave, and right now you have a beard, but when I've seen you clean shaving. When you do a clean shave, right, from your cheek next to your ear to your chin, that's the moment of truth for a shaver. And that moment of truth has one visual feeling of hair getting shaved smoothly. Second is the tactile, your skin feels it. But a very important part of that is the sonic feedback, which is the sound it makes when it comes down. That slight krrr that comes down, it's just very satisfying. The amount of research and PhDs and effort that Gillette has put in to get the right blade steel, the right angle, the right exposure, the tolerance on the exposure, how close the blades are together, how much aloe is there on top, how big the blade has to be below. It's crazy to get that one right. Or even Coke, for example, right? Coke had this whole huge campaign around the opening of the Coke, and sound. The ads were just sonic, right? And then there was that fizz, they actually had just a silhouette of the Coke bottle, and that fizz that just comes out, and the sound. But I've heard that there's so much research in terms of material science of the cap, the amount of vacuum that is needed for that perfect sound, the texture of the glass bottle. So many people and so many years and so many millions of dollars that go into that one sound. But when you hear that sound, you start feeling thirsty. And that's the impact. So for us, for you, and that's what differentiates for me.
Tell me something. A lot of the times, people are able to see a gap.
Yeah.
Right? Many people don't. But you saw that there is this gap. Underserved market and so on and so forth. But then, what you then say is, oh my God, look, I'm going to go up against Gillette.
Yeah.
Right? What prompted you to take that leap of faith? To say, you know what, I mean, over and above the fact that you said, okay, you know what, I'm going to compromise on the material well-being, steady salary coming from McKinsey, etc. But even beyond that, what was that point? What is that thing where you said, you know what, it's going to be really hard, but let's create a razor?
Yeah. I think, so one is my dad's an entrepreneur. So I saw him build a company. He was CEO of Tech Mahindra. He left that job at the age of 50.
Wow.
And then started a company called Airtight Networks out of California and Pune. And I was in 9th or 10th standard at that time. So I saw
him.
I saw him. His co-founder was a professor of computer science at IIT Kanpur. It's an out-and-out tech company. Early employees are all IIT Kanpur computer science folks who I used to look up to because I was preparing for the JEE exam and all of that. I'm like, wow. And then I saw him build it over the last 2002 to 2019, he sold his business. I saw the whole journey. I saw recession. I saw, expansion. His devices are in the Pentagon in the US. They're in the RBI building. They basically make devices that create force fields for any Wi-Fi network that has sensitive information. So credit card companies, government offices, etc. And he sold the company to Arista. But for me, I always felt so proud when I used to walk into his office and see him in newspapers. And this was 2002, 2003, 2004. There's no VC funding and all that. I had to raise capital in the US and all that. So I used to feel very proud that, for someone at that age, he was 50, he was CEO of Tech Mahindra. He could have milked the last 10 years of his career till he was 60 at a high salary doing what he was doing before. But he didn't do it. He took that plunge. And I saw the respect. Even like folks at McKinsey, like Nosher and so on, who knew him from their work, would respect him a lot more because of, and I felt that this is really cool. And for me, I always felt like that's something I wanted to do. And I think the second thing was I really had a very strong conviction, Aditya, in my heart that if you build something which consumers love, give it to them at the right price and distribute it in a cost-effective way, we'll build something amazing. There were enough examples in retail from, at that time the Pulse Candy had become like a 300 crore brand very quickly. I had seen brands become big in India. I was a big FMCG guy. Like for me, when I am Lucknow, I want to get into FMCG. Like HUL and Procter and Colgate and Reckitt were my choices of going to. And so I was like, I want to build my own company, man. And honestly, the trigger was if I fail, I'll fail in 3-4 years. I won't spend 20 years failing. Because if I spend 20 years, I'll build something successful. If I fail, I'll fail quickly. And in 4 years, I'll be 32. I'll come back to McKinsey. I had good standing in McKinsey and we used to do well. So they'll bring me back as a failed entrepreneur, right? I have to try. So for me, that the safety nets were plenty that way. I had privilege on my side a little bit. But
but I think yes, you're right. But I think it still takes just this. A lot of people come to the edge, and then don't take that step.
I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen a lot. I don't know. I also sometimes feel it's a function of responsibilities, right? I think a lot of people have their EMI is going on for some too. They have a medical condition the parents to take care of. They have something where they feel like, if this doesn't work out, the cost I'll pay for this is so much higher.
Right.
And I think that's where they chicken out. But I really hope that, I've seen people who have reached out to me and say, I'm starting up, this is my idea, this and that. And then 3 months later, I see a LinkedIn update that they've joined as a CEO of some company. I'm like, oh my goodness, we were so close, man. We were so close. But for you, tell me, how did you decide to start up with like this? Of course, I think the industry was one which you knew very well. But talk about working with Mr. Jhunjhunwala and the other promoters. And actually, we've spoken a lot about the steady state differentiating of an airline industry, but talk about the 0 to 1 journey for building an airline company. I'm very curious. How do you even start? Like for me, I'll tell you this 0 to 1 of building a shaving company. Very simple, okay? Which is, hey, here's the gap in terms of products. I want to create these products at this price. Here is the benefits I want to give to the consumer. Here are the 5 R&D labs that I can work with. Here are the people I need to hire. Here's how much money I'll need. So, in 6 months, I'll have a prototype ready. In 12 months, I'll have a market-ready product. And 1.5 years, I'll launch. But I have no idea what this process looks like in Akasa.
But I think it's like, it's kind of opaque to the other side, right? Like, I wouldn't know, for example, who to go to make erasers. I wouldn't know where to find people who can like figure out what is the size of the blade, and I just wouldn't know. I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, how did you do it? Like how?
I think first of all it is Vinay's idea. My business partner, who's the founder and CEO of Akasa. It is Vinay's idea to start an airline. Vinay worked for a bit with. I've had 30 years, almost close to 30 years in the US in the airline business. Vinay. In Delta, in American, at Sabre.
He was an operator.
Just an incredibly fantastic, sort of, originally a Bombay guy.
Okay.
He was a Bombay kid. Went to do a high school and college in the UK and then the US. And then spent 30 years or close to 30 years in the airline business. He came back and started running Jet for a while and then Go Air for a while. I don't think he liked it at all. I remember the first time I met Vinay through our common friend Rahul Bose. As
the actor?
The actor. And it was very clear in the first few minutes that Vinay was special. He's just a super guy, just incredible human being. And I remember the first time I'm meeting him, and I was still the Indigo CEO at that time, and we were meeting for breakfast, and I said, Vinay, why are you doing this? Of course, at that time, he had a whole plan about turning the airline around, etc. And
Let's go ahead.
this is at Jet.
Jet, huh?
And then never got the right support from the people. So therefore, couldn't execute to his plan. Otherwise, we could have probably had 2 more airlines in the country. So in the middle of the pandemic, there is lockdown. We can't step out into our elevator lobby, right? Vinay gives a call and says, Aditya, I think we should start. I've been thinking about this idea since last evening. So I'm calling you. I think we should start an airline. I said, I think it's a great idea. And the reason was he's very mathematical. Vinay is extremely mathematical. So he's very logic driven. I hope I have some logic, but I'm also, I get excited about new things. But it was very clear. Again, one airline has failed, 2 airlines are about to fail. So there is constrained capacity, supply constrained market. India is, booming.
Yeah.
And fine. I mean, at that time, in the early days of the lockdown, we did not think it's going to last out till whatever, 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think, but then what happened was my father was not well at that time, and I soon lost my father. And I kind of ghosted Vinay, right? Because I was just so caught up with so many other things going on. And then Vinay diligently worked away at this idea. And through some folks reached out to Rakesh, Junilwala, my apologies, RJ. And I knew RJ from the Indigo IPO days. But he lost touch. As in, after I left Indigo, etc.
He's become a little more, like he's unwell also.
Correct. And, so I got a message and a call from one of his close colleagues, Ushma, who's of course still, they're a very tight group who've worked together for years. And that's the other thing about, any of these successes, whether you're an investment fund or a company, it's often like just
core group
who not just out of loyalty, but people who kind of stick together and put in the years. Yeah. Anyway. So Ishra said, there's something that we want to talk to you about. So do you mind if we get onto a Zoom call? I said, yeah, sure. So the screen is blank. I've got my camera on, but I'm at home and we're talking and it's late evening. And they begin to talk about this airline thing. So about 10 minutes, so I gave my views, this, that, the other. Then I said, 10 minutes into the conversation, I said, hey, by the way, is this the Vinay's idea, the one that you're talking about? They said, yeah. I said, okay, well, in the interest of full disclosure, Vinay had reached out to me and unfortunately, I've ghosted them and so they're like, oh, that's great. And then suddenly this, gruffy, garble, loud voice of RJ comes on and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know you were on the call. And he says, and he said, what do you think? I said, I think it's just a great idea. And then I again began to explain. He said, yeah, I don't understand the business. That you and Vinay will have to kind of figure it out. But do you think it's a good idea? I said it is. So then he said, okay, I said, please first talk to Vinay. He said, of course. We'll talk to Vinay and then come back to you. So give us about a week or so and we'll come back. I said, sure, absolutely. Within 10 minutes, he called back. He said, I spoke to Vinay. He's super excited. He's like, I've been trying to get this guy, and so on and so forth. So really, I think what Vinay saw was like we all did. But I think because maybe, and this is a question that because maybe at that time he had already exited out of the Go Air, when you suddenly have nothing to lose and you see this opportunity, and he took that step, right? And I think I'm privileged to, become a part of that. But once that, then I'm in my comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm super in my comfort zone, thinking this thing. And we have we really get along with each other. And RJ was just a phenomenal investor. Phenomenal. And I'll tell you
how do the economics work? Like, do you go and buy planes first?
Yeah, so
you get permission from the government. You put in capital.
Before I get there, I will talk about that. Before I get there, I want to talk about RJ as an investor. Because a lot of us, we deal with investors. And here is somebody who had this public persona of being the big bull, right? But in reality, RJ was a huge believer in India, super aggressive about the India story and all of that.
Extremely, yeah.
Extremely. He would joke, he would abuse, he would disrupt meetings and all of that. But. And here is the cool thing. And that, I think, this is where these true great investors become who they are. Had so much respect for the management teams. Never once forced one decision on you. Questioned you, argued with you, gave his ideas, violent disagreement, but at no point of time did he ever convey tacitly, otherwise, overtly, that this is going to be his decision. Backing that founder.
Amazing.
And I've seen that with us. I've seen that with, Metro Shoes, Star Health, like Titan,
yeah, very
so many different
sizable investor.
Yeah. Right? Aptex. And this ability to push and intellectually push, but always have respect for the founder. Because founder, management team, whatever you call. And here is another very interesting thing. Every meeting we ever had, weirdly, one question he would ask is, so what are we doing about our employees' mental health?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
So I think,
Was this a COVID layered question, or was he someone who got into it?
I think he genuinely liked people, but he was also sensitive to the fact that COVID has really changed everything, right? Changed everyone. Right. So now coming to how do you do that?
But to your point on this, right? I think extremely successful public market investors, and you see that with Buffett or in India, they're like Nikhil Vora, who's Sixth Sense founder, and is on our cap table. I see very similar things.
Yeah.
Intellectually pushes you to the sometimes I feel like, Nikhil, if you think that we're not worth it, why didn't you even invest or whatever? No, you're awesome, but I have to push you.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
And they're not doing it because it sounds cool.
Yeah,
they're genuinely interested. Why are you doing this? Have you thought this through?
And his pushes have been the most valuable for us. I can tell you.
In a small way, Shorby calls me the chief slapper at wholesome food, but I, in my own small way, all the businesses that I'm involved in, and I hope to get more and more involved, it's actually asking those questions which I think brings about a lot more clarity in myself or in the teams that we're working with. Right?
It's very underrated. Asking that question.
Exactly. That okay, why are you doing this? And have you thought of this thing, and so on and so forth. And I think that's what makes it fun. Yeah. So when choosing an investor, many of the folks in our audience who will be at various stages in their entrepreneurial journey, whether they've established a company or, for that matter, whether they're starting. Choosing the right investor is like choosing a friend. It's like choosing a marriage. Or
permanent, and it's permanent.
And it's permanent, right? That where do you... Bejul Samaya, I've seen that, right? Bejul and Ritesh's relationship, for example. So the primer on starting an airline.
Yes.
That
we'll come to that. Yeah.
That'll be the shortest answer. It's very, very simple, actually.
How do you do it?
Right? So, so of course, it starts off like any other business. You genuinely believe that there is a market opportunity. I say this to every founder that I can think of, that if there is no gap in the market, if you haven't been able to identify a particular need that is not being made, don't start it. I mean, it's not about creating a valuation. It's not about calling yourself a founder. It's not about those bragging rights. It's actually being able to say, here is a problem that needs to be solved.
Correct.
If you cannot find that problem, don't start it, because you're bound to fail, right? I mean, that is a guarantee of failure, that if you haven't been able to identify what is the need that you're trying to solve. In our case, in a country like India, the US has 330 million people. I think it's close to 10,000 airplanes.
Right. So how many airports?
Actually, I should find out. I can't remember, but it'll be like literally hundreds of airports.
Yeah, I think US might actually be 1,000 airports.
Yeah. I mean,
can you find out how many airports in the US have?
14,000
commercial airports.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
So India today has 147.
And what was that number 10 years back?
And 10 years back was 75.
To have doubled it basically in 10 years.
And in the next 2 years, it will become 250. Right. 250 and 14,000.
14,000, yeah.
Right. Airports. 500, give or take 500 airplanes and 10,000 airplanes. 1.4 billion people, 330 million.
Yeah.
Right. Southwest Airlines is a low-cost carrier. It's not the country's largest airline in the US. Has close to 1,000 airplanes, give or take. Right. And all narrow-body airplanes. So not ATRs or turboprops and things like that. So the demand-supply gap is just that huge. So there is a need. The DGCA provides a procedure on the basis of which you fill up a form. There are some conditions given that you have to have some minimum amount of capital, a business plan, blah, blah, blah. And you apply for what's called an initial NOC, right? Which is a no objection certificate. So they'll examine it, that you have the capital, you have the...
And how much capital is this really?
Long time back, it used to be like 30 crores, 20 years ago. Now it's a little bit more, but it's not it's not like $1 billion.
It's a healthy Series A.
Yeah, right, exactly. that's actually well put. Right. Yeah. So then, based on that, they give you an initial NOC. So it's very clearly laid out what kind of people you need, etc. Where do you find the people? There are enough number of very experienced professionals in India who have spent their careers in the airline business in India. And there are enough Indians who are sitting in the Middle East, who are sitting in, Southeast Asia, especially the Middle East, who are of Indian origin, who have been working in the airline business. Right. So now once you've got that, there is again a very clearly set out this thing that this is the type of flight operations manual you need, and this is this procedure, that procedure, etc., 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 that you need to put together. And you go through this whole process with the regulator, where they keep examining your level of preparedness. While you're doing that, you go to the 2 aircraft manufacturers and try to see if you can buy airplanes from them.
Directly from them.
From them. Or you can go to lessors and say, can I lease airplanes? Now, leasing airplanes, like, if you were to lease, if you were to lease a car from a leasing company, it'll be more expensive than actually being able to go and buy it out straight away.
Correct.
Right. But of course, buying it out straight away needs capital.
And can you borrow that capital? Or
you can borrow the capital, right? Or you can have an investor who puts in that capital. Or you can have aircraft financiers who, based on your management team, your clarity of your business, the market opportunity will finance buying that aircraft.
Okay. And this is debt financing.
But it is on the aircraft.
Okay.
Right? You're not taking it on your balance sheet.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right. Now it starts the other operational stuff. Pilots, flight attendants, aircraft engineers. Maybe you will have a few airport people on your rolls, but you will go and enter into an arrangement with ground handling agencies. There are again designated ground handling agencies in each airport, and you enter into an arrangement with them for them to do your airport services.
Got it.
Right. Catering company to get the food. Now, obviously, when you get to, the next is you go to the airports, different airports.
And how long did it take for, let's say, you go get into an arrangement with Boeing and you get some financing and so on? You buy 5, 1, 10, like, is there like a minimum order quantity for aircraft?
So two things there.
How do you choose sectors?
So two things there. One is that you can, of course, order 5 airplanes also, but the larger number of airplanes you are able to commit to, your cost of acquisition goes down.
Significantly or like?
Significantly. Of course, there is a point of diminishing return.
Correct.
Right. Second is whether there is aircraft availability or not. Today, if you try to go buy fresh new airplanes, the nearest slots are now in 2029, 2030.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So now comes a question of timing also. Remember, Indigo started less than 4 years after 9/11. Akasa started in the middle of the pandemic. Or at least the concept. So you have to therefore not get swayed by, not get scared, let me not say square, not get scared by what's happening in the immediate.
Yeah.
But look at the long-term opportunity, because this is a 15, 20-year business.
Correct.
A lot of people say, "Arey yaar, the business is great, yaar. After the pandemic, people are like, there is revenge travel." That means nothing. That revenge travel will go away after 4 months, 6 months, 1 year. You're building a business for the next 20 years. So do you genuinely believe
in the opportunity?
In the opportunity. Right. Today, if couple who you will speak to is saying, am I going to put up a hotel in Thimphu? Or am I going to put up a hotel in Mangalore? Or am I going to put up 3 hotels in Goa? He's not saying what is the traffic this season.
Yeah.
He's looking at the next several years and saying, you know what? Hey, I haven't been to his property, but this property that he's got next to the Arabian Sea in Mangalore, it's right on the ocean.
Yeah.
And he's figured it out that nobody has gone to that area.
Yeah.
Right? Or, again, I've seen these pictures of his hotel in Thimphu in Bhutan. He's figured it out that for the next several years, as Indian travelers begin to, spend, so likewise over here also, you are betting on that long-term opportunity.
Yeah.
Likewise, aircraft manufacturers also are going to see, is there a long-term opportunity? Because they can sell to America, they can sell to Thailand, they can sell to some African country, they can sell to South America. Why would they come and sell to India?
Correct.
Because they see that this is the fastest growing aviation market in the world. It will become the third largest, second largest aviation market in the world over the next 15, 20 years. So if I don't get in now, the other guy will.
And this is a duopoly.
Pretty much.
There's no Bombardier and there's none of that.
There is, but Bombardier makes smaller jets. Right. Airbus then bought this thing, but those are slightly smaller jets. China makes jets, but we don't buy them. The Russians make jets, but we don't buy them. Right. So therefore, it's actually this belief in the market, and then this opportunity. Now the same thing then goes to when you're trying to attract new colleagues to come and join this paper airline, right?
Correct.
You have to be able to sell that
vision.
That vision. But more importantly, and I'm a big one on organization cultures, especially talent pool which is constrained. what is the reason that they will come and work with you? Sometimes it can be more money.
Yeah.
But if you keep playing that game, your cost structure is keep going to rise and you're going to have a bankrupt airline.
So this 1 rupee for the tea is not going to work.
That's right. You've got to make sure that this person says, you know what, I will be able to reach my true potential if I'm here. Today, I'm sure, when you spend time in this, especially the product design, in a country like India, I'm assuming product design must be a pretty, specialized. There'll be a few people who are really, really good at it.
And it's difficult.
There
are a lot of people who do it, but you are good at it. So that's, you're right.
But that person can today work at Bombay Shaving Company. That person can today work at, I don't know, nothing. They can work at Lenskart. They can work at Boat. So why is it that they choose to work in a few of these companies?
Yeah.
And while somebody else sitting somewhere can say, here, I'll double your salary, you come and work for me. Right? So there is something that person feels that I will be respected for what I bring to the table. I'm going to be able to create something and so on and so forth. So likewise, when our pilot colleagues come and choose to work at Akasa or in the early days at Indigo, there was something that they saw here that they feel this is the place to be at. This is where I always say, do you feel that there is a safety net? Not complacency, but there's a safety net.
You're protected.
If something happens to you, if for whatever reason you end up having a health issue, you lose your license due to a medical issue, you are on a layover in some other part of the country, and your family needs some assistance, is the organization or people like me one phone call away?
Yeah.
Do you see career progression here? I'm fortunate to be part of, and this is some of the most exciting bits of my life in the last 16 years. I've been fortunate to have been a part of or play a role in the lives of so many of my colleagues who started off doing something, but they're doing something phenomenally different today.
Yeah.
And by the hundreds or maybe by the thousands. So, that I think is some of the things that keep people together. So, then you bring people together. Then, in a...
And how much time does it take for you to hire your pilots, flight attendants, aeroplanes?
Yeah, so...
NOC,
this is typically a couple of years journey.
That's very fast for all of this.
Yeah. So, but having said that, yes, it is very fast. It is very fast.
It sounds.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have assumed it's like a 4-5 year thing.
And it can be, if you don't get all of these things right. And I think that not to overplay the role of people like me, but that's where having done it before, having seen this is
so underrated. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Having said that, imagine today, Shantanu, we meet so many youngsters. If I said to them, start working on your idea today in the summer of 2024, not before 2026, 2027 will your first product come out. Very few people will put in those 600 days of hard work, 700 days of hard work.
I agree.
But
it's an instant gratification thing for founder. I agree.
In the case of Indigo, the idea about starting an airline was born in about 2001, 2002.
Right after 9/11.
Yeah. The initial NOC we got in April of 2004. Aircraft was ordered in summer of 2005. First flight took off in August of 2006. You have to have that patience and that tenacity to be at it.
And in 4 years mein, there is still every month payroll and everything is going on, right?
And लोग पूछ रहे हैं कर क्या रहा है यार? What are you doing? क्या करता है यार?
And you were at Indigo during this?
Yeah. I mean, at the parent company. right? So to go do nothing, but you sit in a small conference room and go at it. It's a bit like, if you were, I'm assuming, and I think we should someday do a podcast with people like Dr. Reddy, G.V. Prasad, for instance. In a pharma company, you would be at it, right?
Yeah.
You put this several years before a drug finally gets approved
in the US,
and you go out there and put it out there. But this is where those operational, heavy, long gestation period type of businesses, if you can get it right, there's hardly anybody else.
That's the mode, right?
That's the mode.
That's the
mode.
I talk to people even you're right, like Mr. Agarwal, but even power plants.
Yeah.
He had in Jharsuguda, where I work.
Yes.
He had huge pot rooms making aluminium, buying bauxite from Lanjigarh. There's 16,000 employees and half the plant are not working.
Correct.
And he was unfazed. I would look at that whole, it was like a 8,000 acre place. I'm like, my goodness, how are you bankrolling this?
And Shantanu, it's very, again, another thing that is underrated is how personal some of these journeys are for most businesses and for most leaders. I always say, you look at any Harvard Business School case study, right? It's always about an individual.
Yeah.
It's always someone who's leading a transformation, right? It's in the context of a company, but, somebody who turned around Lululemon, somebody who, was the restaurant manager at the Taj when 26/11 happened. There is somebody who's working in Gucci and turned it around, and so on and so forth, right?
Only the person,
Yeah. So that basically means that let's talk about the India context, and especially the India that we're living in today. Let's say if you walk into Quorum Club and somebody asks, "Ya kya kar raha hai aajkal? What are you doing?" The tendency is you want to tell them what you're doing and what I did yesterday and what I did 2 months before, as opposed to saying, "Yeah, same old, yeah, I'm just at it." And how do you build that discipline to say, I am going to be at it? And if people don't understand it, if people don't appreciate it, I don't have a cool answer, I'm not talked about in the newspaper, I'm not getting the next 30 under 30 award.
The fame is not there.
Yeah, the fame is not there yet. It's okay. It takes that time. It is that 10-year over journey to be an overnight success.
You think patience is waning?
I think definitely. I think I always say people should be young and enthusiastic, not young and impatient.
Yeah.
Definitely patience is waning. And earlier, I used to blame investors. I used to blame the street. I used to blame the stock market.
The quarterly reviews.
But Shantanu, today, I think, you would know this better, but I think there is enough of an ecosystem of investors in India who are thoughtful people, right? So then why are there not more founders who are building or teams who are building for the long term? Because the opportunity is there. How many companies do we have in India whose market cap is more than $100 billion? We should have a country like India, we should have 500 companies with a market cap of over $100 billion. But it will not happen overnight.
I completely. I think the one thing around founders who, when you get sucked into celebrating fundraisers, that basically means you're valuing valuation.
Correct.
When you're valuing valuation, you make valuation the milestone.
That's right.
And the end goal. When you make it the end goal, you want it to happen quickly.
Yes.
And then you want to do things like cashing out and this and that and flipping. A lot of entrepreneurs, that's great. I think entrepreneurs are building and flipping businesses. They find a good home for a business, that's fine. But if you're building it where the business model is not one you can flip, then
and I maybe there are two things in this that I'd like to talk about. One is that, like you said, there is absolutely nothing wrong in building your company to a certain stage
and selling it.
Absolutely. But if I look at it, tweak that perspective slightly and say, I'm actually handing it over to somebody. So can I get it to the shape where even that new person will say, 5 years later, kya company बनाई थी उसने यार? And because of that, we got a great company and we have been able to grow it 10x.
Correct.
The second is that growth, for the sake of growth, will become a vanity metric.
Correct.
But yes, if there are enough number of people, enough number of unserved customers, underserved customers, and you're able to grow with that genuinely, because there are that many customers. Like, the air conditioning example we took, or we can take the example of refrigerators, or we can take the example of, these bikes or cars, cycles or anything in India, right? Which actually answers the question that you asked me, how do you do network planning? How do you do route planning? If it had been a very mature market, then you'll have to do all kinds of sensitivity analysis and things like that. Here, so when I remember when we first started Pune, Hyderabad, many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, I had a very interesting insight. There was a journalist I used to know who had family in Hyderabad. And they were based in Pune. And that person, there was no flight. There was a train. But typically people would get into a shared taxi and pay 3,600 rupees one way to go from Pune to Hyderabad 12 years ago in a shared taxi and a 10-hour journey.
That's crazy.
Right? Airfare, when we started Pune, Hyderabad, was like some 3,000 rupees. And you save 9 hours.
Correct.
So there are many, many, many such opportunities like this.
That's
right. So therefore, if you can look at even this, you don't have to be a math genius to be able to you should optimize all of those kind of things. But the opportunity is staring at our face. I'll give you an example. I was recently ordering something off Amazon, which in Gurgaon was an overnight delivery. Like, if I had ordered it in the evening, next morning between 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., it would have arrived at my home. If I had tried to deliver that to Rishikesh, right, in the main town, it was a 5-day delivery. If I tried to order it in the adjacent pin code, 2.5 kilometers away from the center, it was a 21-day delivery. So, theoretically, that pin code is covered. But can you imagine how broken the delivery logistics is?
Correct.
Right? For example, therefore, I wonder if I try to order something off Amazon from Bombay Shaving Company in Gurgaon versus from that pin code, what would be the difference?
Yeah.
And it's not because you are doing it any differently. It's just that the logistics is broken. Wow, what an opportunity staring at our face.
Again, operationally heavy business. So
operational heavy business.
Big moat.
Right. And if you can find out, oh wow, man, there must be, if there is one that I came up with, there must be at least 2,000 such other routes. Yeah. And if I could create a competitive advantage where I have exclusive distribution in those 2,000 pin codes, where the guy is bringing it 10 minutes away, I'm just now taking it.
Yeah.
And instead of 21 days, I crash it to 5 or 6 or 1 or 2. Wow.
Yeah. Everyone benefits.
Everyone benefits. The manufacturer will be able to sell more. The main big guy logistics company will not have to deal with the last mile linkage. The customer will get more products.
That's true. That is true. I agree with you. There's so much.
And this is not some, macroeconomics, data study. This is right staring at our face.
Operations. I think monetization of media. I think the homes, 1 crore homes, for example, that we're building out. I think there are just so many opportunities in India. I just feel like, for example, a lot of consumption the market is softened on consumption. I am hoping that after the election cycle, for example, it kind of ramps back up. In places like travel, etc., it's very clear that there is now an upward trajectory where the slope is now kind of fixed or will increase in the future. But I'm hoping that incomes go up and,
well, one is that. Look, I also think that different markets, for the same type of product also, there will be very, very different market segments also. So, let's say if you're doing shampoo or hair color.
Yeah.
Right. There'll be different price points. There'll be different packaging sizes. Now the question really is, and that each business will answer for themselves, do I want to play in all of the segments? Do I use a certain type of packaging and pouch size to enter somebody's bathroom and then bring them up to the bigger pack sizes once it becomes a habit, right? Because, having come from the transportation business, which is so commoditized, Shantanu, one thing that I'm a little bit always scared about, and again, folks like you might have a different perspective and I would love to hear. I don't bet on increase of income. In all of the businesses that I'm in, many of the businesses that I'm in, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a airline, the revenue side is pretty commoditized, Unless you have a distinctly different product where the premiumization happens. But brands and all are important, but just on the basis of the brand to get 50% more, 100% more than what they're able to pay, what they are paying today, is a difficult ask.
But some categories, so I think the Coke guys said it beautifully, right? At certain GDP per capita, certain industries open up.
That's right.
So like $2,500, $3,000 GDP per capita, you will see like energy drinks, sugar drinks.
Absolutely.
That's the disposable. It's not about income going up, but it's about percentage of disposable income that households become comfortable spending on a particular category goes up.
Yeah.
And now you see like a lot of beverage companies coming in. Like Paperboard, for example, I think it will ride a tailwind now.
Yeah.
Lahori Jeera will ride a tailwind now. And I think tastes will evolve, so they'll figure out their niches and build out 1,000 crore brands over a period of time. But you're right. I think income increasing is not the reason for consumption increase. I think it's more about penetration of disposable income.
And initially it will take that time of getting people to, create a habit.
Yeah.
Many years ago, we started a campaign. This is in 2000, I think 9, 10-ish. So really long back. The reason to fly. And we used to have these funny ads. Mother-in-law in town, Indigo to somewhere else.
My CEO and I have taken your Banaras to Bangkok. Punya se Papa the flight. I found that marketing hilarious. So outstanding.
So how do I get that person to? I'm on the board of a company called HRIPL, very unimaginatively named Hygiene Research Institute. But Premji Invest as an investment in an ad. They built the 60-year-old company built by this Chabra family. And they make this hair product called Streaks. Right?
I love that. Yeah.
And they're clear market leader. So now they're kind of saying, okay, how do I achieve more in the professional space? How do I achieve more in this sort of young Indian space? Different colors, different this thing, but different pouch sizes, affordable. Okay, let me try it once, type of a thing. HUL and all did that so well, right? With the 1 rupee shampoo sachet.
The sachets, yeah.
Right, or the coffee, sachets.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's definitely, like the point you were making, that is one way that consumption will definitely increase, as will the disposable income of a certain type of people. I mean, if we go from, what is it, $2,500 GDP per capita to $12,000 GDP per capita in the next 20 years, naturally that's going to...
Yes.
I mean, let's take a small piece of that pie, and we've got incredible growth there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as we reach the twilight of the conversation, I think how much time has it been?
It's been 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours? 2 hours 50 minutes? That's crazy.
That's amazing.
I've not seen it. And I don't think we'll have to edit out much. Anything at all. But I think before we let you go, I think the amount of things that you do, and I think we need a episode 2 to talk about homage and your philanthropy side, and we've not spoken about your philanthropy side, we've not spoken about your investing side, we've not spoken about a lot of things that actually are a big part of who you are and what you do. But before we let you go, I think one message for people who are watching us who want to take something away from you to kind of take into their own lives, and they're probably 22, 23 years old, maybe fresh out of college or in college maybe, or in a first job, kind of toying with the idea of doing something of their own, or not.
Yeah.
But what is the one thing you would leave with them, imagining that that they're all looking at you?
So let me first start off with people who haven't even yet decided that they want to be an entrepreneur. I think the biggest one over there is, approach everything with an honesty of purpose. Somebody tells you to photocopy papers. Somebody tells you to staple a sheaf of papers. Somebody tells you to make a cup of tea. Can you try to do it the best that anybody can? Right? Think about, will that person should I staple it on the side? Should I staple it over here? Should I staple it in a corner? Should I photocopy it on both sides or one? Approach it with an honesty of purpose. I say that because repeatedly I've seen this in my own life. I was doing something, to the best of my ability. Somebody noticed that and gave me an opportunity that I never thought I would get. Right.
That is so true.
And that then therefore applies to whether this is your first job going door-to-door salesman or your first job as a consultant.
Yeah. Whatever you're doing.
The second is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and I think this country needs tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, we don't have enough jobs. We will never be able to create enough jobs. In the next 25 years, 182 million Indians will join the workforce. We won't have 182 million new jobs.
Yeah. In the current setup.
This current setup. So therefore, we will need more entrepreneurs who will create more livelihood opportunities for others. Please try to look out of the window while being in a bus or an auto rickshaw or a cycle or walking.
Or an airplane.
Or an airplane. And see what are the hard problems to solve. Yeah. What are the things that it's right in front of our eyes, but somebody is not being able to solve it. And don't think if it is too small. Don't think whether this will have, the next $10 billion outcome. It can be that, looking at office chairs and you say, can I make better wheels?
Yeah.
It could be anything. Get your hands dirty with actually figuring out a need, creating a product that matches it, executing it at a cost that people can pay for, and convincing other people to join the journey.
I agree. I find this such a valuable point of view because I see so many young entrepreneurs saying we want to revolutionize the way people eat.
I love the ambition, but
it's so...
Yeah, and I don't think I'm convinced they have no idea what they just said. Is it that... Anyway, I don't want to sound rude. There is only one way to eat, right? There is not going to come into some other road. So that. Then the third is every conversation, and I was having this conversation with a young entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur yesterday, who has, by the way, got funding from a VC, respectable VC. And at the end of the 2 hours, we could not figure out what is the need and which customer you're solving for. I actually want to call up that VC fund and say, what are you guys doing? Right? And I got a long message in the evening saying, I think this is the reality check I needed. Right. And I have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what I...
Earlier the better.
Yeah, earlier the better, right? And then humility, just,
take it on.
Yeah, take a chill pill. Like, chill pill in the sense my colleagues will tell you that I run on 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So I'm not like saying that, go sit under a tree and meditate 14 hours a day. But chill pill in terms of how seriously you take yourself.
Correct.
Right. And just see, wow, that's where I need to get to. And finally, create something that the world has not seen before, or aspire to see, whatever it might be. You want to create water, let it be in a packaging that is like amazing.
The world hasn't seen before.
Yeah, the world hasn't seen it. Pursue excellence, not mediocre.
Small thing that I completely agree. But that's such so valuable. Thank you so much, Aditya. I think this has been a pleasure. But before we let you go, we have a gift for you.
Oh, awesome.
We have a full hamper, of course, so that we replenish your Bombay shaving. But can I get the head shaver first? Because there's something that you and I will bond on.
You know this, dad joke of mine, right? I got this from somewhere, which is like...
Give me the new one, no? Give me the new one. How? What is the joke?
God made a few perfect heads and the rest he covered with hair. And it's
this product that we made called the head shaver.
Wow.
This is for you. But I want to take the pleasure of opening it and showing you how it works, because it's my favorite product in Bombay Shaving Company, by the way.
I thought you were going to say, I learned this term some years ago from my Gen Z millennial colleagues called unboxing.
Unboxing? Do we have a scissor with it?
Getting the one.
Yeah, or a knife?
Yeah.
My God, I hope you
So by the way,
the number of people who are
yesterday I bought a bar of chocolate.
Right.
And I'm going to call up the founders to just give them the delivery input. Talk about packaging. So it's a great chocolate, and you pull out the pouch from inside. It's that foil pouch, but the tear is on the top.
Yeah.
It should be sideways, right?
Correct. I agree.
And I was just thinking, somebody's not thought of it. Because now if you tear it from the top, you've got to now take this out. Part of the chocolate is coming out this way. Now it's got part hai.
So it can got it right, no?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Can be not got it right. Yeah. And it's amazing. From 5 rupees single
This
stick.
product obsession is important enough.
I don't know how often do you shave your head?
Once in 2 days.
It's a frequent case.
Yeah.
Same here. Because I don't like the hair coming inside, right? So even I shave my head like once in 2-3 days, maybe three times a week. And I'm like, cool, can we make a product that is without water or cream or foam? You can do it dry. Second is, does not make a mess. Third is, because the head is only skin and bone, you can get cut easily. You can be safe. And can it shave behind your ears easily? That was the fun doubt. Okay? This is 4,000 rupee product. They're selling 100 a day now. I had no idea this will scale like this. But this is one for you.
Thank you.
And I'll pack it back for you. I just wanted to show it to you. Because you like product.
Wow.
You're product obsessed, right? So you all Shimla Mirch ergonomics, okay? It looks like a bell pepper. But what I love the most about this product is that it kind of packs on in a magnetic way. So whenever you want to clear it, just open it and do this. Hold it under water, no problem. And it kind of sticks.
Yeah.
And a simple button. Hold it.
That's very cool. That is very cool.
Just press it to your head.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is the first time I've shaved and on camera.
And then just with your other hand, just follow the mistake and figure it out.
This is going to be viral.
For 60 seconds. It was 60 seconds to shave my head. What do you do right now?
You leave the whole razor.
Oh, try this.
Yeah.
Just try this. But with this,
amazing.
What you need to do is just rotate it on your head 2-3 times, because unlike a razor, you won't get all of it.
Yeah, I got it.
But it's much smoother. And you won't have razor bumps and stuff like that. It's just...
This is very cool.
Yeah. I would love for you to try it.
Where was the visit to the barbershop?
The real barbershop. Not this OG barbershop. I was like, Aditya's coming. I told Vidit, Aditya's coming. We have to get him to try it.
That is amazing.
So we have a full hamper for you as well. But this I wanted to show you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
But I'll let me pack this. Yeah, hold on.
Thank you so much.
And think about this. This is a category which is completely dominated by
Philips.
electronic companies.
Yeah.
Philips and so on, right?
Yeah.
I'll put this on top. Philips, Havells, Cisco,
Yeah,
these guys,
yeah.
right?
That's very cool. Thank you so much.
We're the only grooming company here in this.
And where are these manufactured?
They are manufactured in China.
And this post-COVID supply chain didn't give you...
Not much. It's okay.
And how much time does it take for these things to get manufactured and shipped?
So design takes a long time.
You're right.
So design is our buying aeroplane
Yeah, of
step.
course.
After you design it and the molds are ready, then it's a 45-day process.
From when you order?
Orders, yeah.
When it...
Now it's purchase orders. And now once you build credibility with the manufacturer, you can actually get
And where
90-day
in
credit.
China are they done?
Guangzhou.
Wow.
Shenzhen, Guangzhou.
And you don't think people ever manufacture these in India?
We'll have to move this to India. We will absolutely move this to India. The moment we feel like there is a critical mass of scale in the trimmer and razor category, we'll move it.
And you will do it yourself or you'll do contract?
We'll do it in JVs. We'll do JVs with some of the manufacturers because they have the expertise, they have this thing, but we have the market. So we are the brand, they're the
Easy.
build it together.
Thank
This
you.
is such a pleasure. Thank you.